We're doing a quiet anniversary this year, Mom. Just the people who really matter. That's what my daughter told me over the phone, and I sat there in my kitchen holding the receiver, waiting for the rest of the sentence, the part where she'd say, "But, of course, that means you." It never came. The line just hummed. 40 years of marriage she was celebrating for her and her husband, the man I'd co-signed a mortgage for, and somewhere in the math of who really mattered, I had been subtracted. "Of course, sweetheart," I said. My voice came out smooth, the way it always does when something inside me is cracking. "You two deserve a nice quiet evening. I knew you'd understand. You're the best." And she was gone, off to whatever was more important, leaving me with a cup of decaf going cold and the clock over the stove ticking too loud. I'm 74. My name doesn't matter much in this story, but my husband's does. Walter. He passed 11 years ago this spring, and I still set his coffee mug on the counter some mornings out of pure habit, that brown one with the chip on the handle that he refused to throw out. I talk to it sometimes. Don't tell anybody. After he died, I had two things left that I was sure of: this little house on Birchwood Lane that we paid off the year he retired, and my daughter, Colleen. I poured everything I had into both of them. The thing about giving is that you don't notice the moment it stops being appreciated and starts being expected. It happens so slowly. One year you bring the pie and everyone cheers. The next year you bring the pie and they just point to where it goes on the table. The year after that they ask, a little impatient, why you're running late with the pie. I had already bought the gift. That's the part that still makes me shake my head. Their 40th anniversary, Colleen and her husband Dale. And back in February, I'd gone to the jeweler downtown and put a deposit on a pair of matching watches. Engraved. 40 years, all my love, and then their names. I'd been paying it off $20 at a time, the way I do, because my Social Security only stretches so far and I wanted it to be something real, something they'd keep. I picked them up the week before the party I wasn't invited to. I want to tell you about how it got this way, because if you've lived long enough, you already know it didn't happen overnight. When Colleen and Dale were first married, they had nothing. A drafty apartment over a laundromat, two folding chairs, and a mattress on the floor. I loved those years. God forgive me, because they needed me. I'd drive over with groceries and a casserole, and Colleen would hug me at the door like I'd brought the sunrise. When the babies came, my grandbabies, Tyler first, and then little Hannah, I was there before the hospital paperwork was dry. I rocked them through colic. I sat up with fever so Colleen could sleep before her shift. I sewed Halloween costumes at my kitchen table until 2 in the morning because store-bought ones cost money they didn't have, and I had time and love to spare. Then Dale got the promotion. Then they bought the bakehouse out in the new development, the one with the 2-story foyer and the kitchen island the size of my whole dining room. I helped with the down payment. $31,000 out of the money Walter left me, money that was supposed to be my cushion, my just in case. Dale called it an investment in family. I signed the check at their kitchen table, and Colleen cried and said, "Mom, we'll always have a place for you here." There was even a guest room. She showed it to me with such pride: pale blue walls, a quilt folded at the foot of the bed. "This is yours, Mom, whenever you want." I stayed in that room exactly, never. Every time I visited, it had become something else. A home office, a storage room for Dale's golf equipment and the exercise bike nobody used. Once it was full of boxes from some online business venture of Dale's that fizzled out by spring. The quilt got moved to a closet. "Just temporary," Colleen always said, and I always nodded, and I stopped bringing my overnight bag. The visits got shorter every year. It used to be all day. Then it was lunch. Then it was me, driving 40 minutes across town, sitting politely in their spotless kitchen, handing over my carefully chosen gifts, and watching them get set aside half-opened. Tyler and Hannah on their phones. Dale checking the score. Colleen smiling that tight little smile that never quite reached her eyes anymore. I made excuses for all of them. The kids are teenagers, that's just how teenagers are. Dale works so hard. Colleen's so busy. I told myself the distance was geography and not the heart. But you can only tell yourself a story so many times before the truth gets tired of being ignored. The anniversary party was on a Saturday. I knew because Hannah, my granddaughter, who was 16 and not yet fully fluent in cruelty, had texted me a photo earlier that week without thinking. A picture of the backyard tent going up, string lights, rented tables, 40 guests, she said, so excited. Grandma, are you coming? I stared at that text for a long time. I didn't answer it right away. Instead, I went and got the watches in their velvet box, and I set them on the kitchen table, and I sat down across from them like they were a guest I was waiting on. 40 years, all my love. I had paid for those words a little at a time, and now they had nowhere to go. I'd be lying if I said I didn't cry that night. I did. But it wasn't the kind of crying I expected. It wasn't sad exactly. It was more like something draining out of me that had been festering a long time. When I was done, I felt strangely clear, like a window after a hard rain. The next morning, I woke up early the way I always do. Old habit. 50 years of getting up to make breakfast for people who are gone now or grown and gone. I made my tea, and I sat by the window, and I looked at my little house. The house Walter and I bought in 1971 for $19,000. The house where I raised Colleen, where I nursed Walter through his last winter. Every room in this house has a memory soaked into the walls. Real ones. Messy, loud, full of life. And I thought about that guest room across town that was supposedly mine. The one I never slept in. They built me a room they never meant for me to use. And here I was in a whole house full of rooms that remembered me. That's when I noticed the difference. Sitting there with my tea. They had built a house. I had built a home. And somewhere along the way, I'd started apologizing for the home and chasing the house. That afternoon, there was a knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anybody. For half a foolish second, my heart jumped, the way a mother's heart does, thinking maybe it's Colleen. Maybe she's come to say she's sorry, come to say, of course you're invited, Mom. How could I have made you feel otherwise? I smoothed my hair in the hallway mirror before I opened the door, and I hate that I did that. I hate how ready I was to forgive her before she'd even said a word. But it wasn't Colleen. It was the little boy from 2 doors down. Marcus's grandson, except Marcus passed last year, and now the boy lives with his mother, a tired young woman named Priya who works double shifts at the hospital. The boy's name is Eli. He's maybe 8. He was holding a casserole dish with both hands, the good Pyrex one I'd sent over with a pot roast a couple weeks back when I heard Priya had the flu. "Miss," he said, very serious, "my mom said to bring this back and say thank you. She washed it." "Well, aren't you a gentleman?" I took the dish. It was warm, which confused me until he explained. "She put cookies in it. She said you can't return a dish empty, that's bad luck." I looked down and sure enough, under a square of paper towel, a dozen lopsided chocolate chip cookies, the kind a tired woman makes at 11 at night to teach her son that kindness goes both ways. My throat did something complicated. "Tell your mother thank you," I managed. "These look wonderful. You want one? You can't take cookies home in a dish. That's also bad luck." I made that rule up on the spot. Eli considered it gravely and decided it was probably true. He came in and sat at my kitchen table swinging his legs because they didn't reach the floor, and he ate 2 cookies and told me about a video game I didn't understand and a dog he wanted but couldn't have because of the apartment rules. I listened. I really listened, the way I used to listen to Tyler and Hannah before they decided I was boring. When he left, the house was quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet. Not the empty kind, the kind that's just resting. I sat back down at the table where the velvet box still sat, and I looked at it for a long time. And then I did something that surprised even me. I picked up the phone, and I called the bank. Now, I should explain. After Walter died, I'd done something I thought was wise at the time. I put Colleen's name on one of my accounts, the savings one, so that if anything happened to me, she could handle things. In case I had a stroke, in case I ended up in a home, in case. And over the years, that account had become something else. A pipeline. Dale's car repairs. The kids' braces. A vacation to Florida one year that I paid for and wasn't invited on. Colleen had a way of mentioning a problem to me, just mentioning it, and then a few days later, I'd see the money was gone from that account, and she'd send a heart emoji and the word lifesaver. I told myself it was helping. I told myself that's what mothers do. The woman at the bank was kind. It was a Monday, regular business hours, and I drove down there myself because some things you should do in person, looking another human being in the eye. I'd like to remove my daughter's name from this account, I said, and I'd like to cancel the automatic transfers. She pulled it up on her screen, and her eyebrows went up just slightly at whatever she saw there, the history of it, and then she smoothed her face back into professional calm. Of course. There are a few that are scheduled. You want all of them stopped? Every last one. She had me sign. My hand didn't even shake. When it was done, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. And it took me a minute to name it because it had been so long. It wasn't anger. The anger had burned off the night I cried. This was lighter than that. It was relief. "Is there anything else I can help you with today?" she asked. I thought about the velvet box. I thought about Eli swinging his legs under my table. I thought about Priya making cookies at 11 at night after a double shift. "Yes," I said. "I'd like to open an education savings account. For a child. A 529, I think they're called. Is that something you can do here?" She could. I gave her the boy's information, what little I had, and I told her I'd bring his mother in to handle the rest properly. It wasn't a fortune, but it was the down payment money, more or less. The $31,000 that had bought a guest room I never slept in, redirected to a boy who couldn't take cookies home in a dish. "He's family?" the banker asked, filling in a form. "He's a neighbor," I said. "He's the kind of family you choose." I didn't go to the anniversary party. Saturday came and I knew, around 6 o'clock, that the tent was full, and the lights were lit, and 40 people who really mattered were lifting their glasses out in that big backyard. I didn't sit by the phone. I didn't cry. I made myself a real dinner, salmon and asparagus, and a glass of the good wine I'd been saving for an occasion, and I decided that me choosing myself was occasion enough. Around 8, Hannah texted again. "Grandma, where are you? Mom said you didn't want to come?" Oh, that stung. That one stung in a particular way because there it was, the story she'd told. Not Mom wasn't invited. Mom didn't want to come. I had been turned from someone left out into someone who left. It's an old trick, and people who hurt you are very good at it. I wrote back to Hannah because she's a child and none of this is her fault. "I'm fine, sweetheart. I love you. We'll have our own visit soon, just us." And we did. Later. But that's a different part of the story. The watches I gave to the jeweler to undo. He couldn't take back the engraving, of course. Those words were permanent. But a young couple came in the following month. He told me when I stopped by, getting married on a shoestring, and the young man's eyes went wide at a pair of fine watches marked down to almost nothing. Names already on them that happened to be common enough. 40 years, all my love. I like to think they'll grow into those words. I like to think the love I paid for $20 at a time went somewhere it'll actually be felt. It was Dale who noticed first. Of course it was Dale. The Tuesday after the party he went to move money the way he always did, juggling their accounts, and he found the transfers had stopped. He assumed it was a glitch. Then he tried to pull from the savings account, my savings account, and the access was gone. His wife's name removed. The automatic lifeline simply not there. Colleen called me that afternoon. I watched her name light up the phone. My girl. The baby. I'd rocked through colic, the woman I'd given a down payment and a guest room and 40 years of all my love. I let it ring. I sat with my tea by the window, and I let it ring until it stopped, and then the text came. "Mom, I think there's a problem with the bank. Some accounts got messed up. Call me when you can." A problem with the bank. Not a problem with us. Not Mom. "I'm sorry I didn't invite you." Not Mom. "I made it sound like you didn't want to come, and that was a lie." A problem with the bank. She called twice more before dinner. Then a voicemail, her voice careful and pleasant in that way that means a person is being very, very controlled. "Hi, Mom, just checking in. The kids were asking about you. Give me a ring." She didn't say I love you. At the end, I didn't miss it. Later, much later, after a few days of silence she couldn't fix with a heart emoji, she left a different kind of message. Tired, younger sounding, almost like the girl she used to be. Mom, I don't know what's going on, but I hope you're okay. I know I know I should have called more. I just always figured you'd be there. And then the line went quiet and she hung up without finishing, because there wasn't a way to finish that sentence that wouldn't be an apology, and she wasn't ready to apologize. She just wanted things back the way they were. Me, reliable. Me, available. Me, paying. I understood her confusion. I really did. For so long, I'd been dependable. Not in the loving way, but in the way a utility is dependable. The lights come on when you flip the switch, and you never thank the lights. And now the switch wasn't working, and she couldn't understand why. I didn't call back. Not out of spite. I want to be clear about that. Because some folks would call this revenge, and it isn't. There's no triumph in it for me. That's my daughter. Every day, she doesn't call. A part of me aches. But I have learned, late and at great cost, that you cannot pour from an empty pitcher, and you certainly cannot pour into people who've made it clear there's no place set for you at the table. Here's what I did instead. That winter, I made a list. Not of grievances. I'm too old for grudges. They're too heavy to carry up the stairs. A list of names. The people who showed up. Priya and Eli, 2 doors down. My friend Bonnie from the church choir who calls every single Sunday without fail. The Vietnamese couple who run the corner market and always set aside the good oranges for me. Walter's old fishing buddy who still shovels my walk after every snow and won't take a dime. These were the people I'd overlooked while I was busy chasing a daughter who only turned toward me when she needed something, the way a plant turns toward light. I started showing up for them the way I used to show up for Colleen. I taught Eli how to bake bread, real bread, his hands in the dough and flour on his nose. I drove Vonnie to her cataract surgery and sat in the waiting room with bad coffee. I started hosting Sunday dinners again, my table full of mismatched chairs and people who weren't related to me by blood but who looked at me, really looked at me, when I talked. On Eli's last day of second grade, he brought me a drawing. A crooked house with yellow windows and a stick figure with gray hair, and over the top in careful colored pencil he'd written, "Miss, my friend. It's on my refrigerator right now, held up by a magnet shaped like a tomato. I look at it every morning. Not you make good cookies. Not thank you for the money. My friend, he doesn't even know about the account yet." His mother cried when I told her. That's a story for another day. Colleen and I are not finished, I don't think. Maybe one day she'll knock on my door, not because she needs the guest room money or the braces money or the lifesaver money, but because she misses her mother. If that day comes, I'll open the door. But it'll be on my terms. She'll come into my home, my real home, and she'll sit at my crowded table, and she'll be welcome the same as anybody who shows up with love and no invoice attached. What I've stopped doing is carrying the gifts up the stairs. I spent so many years hauling boxes and casseroles and checks in my whole self up to a door that opened a little less each time. I told myself that's what love was. The carrying. The carrying was the love. But I was wrong. Love that only flows one way isn't love. It's a tax. And I'd been paying it so long I mistook the relief of giving for the warmth of being received. You don't have to be chosen to matter. I learned that at 74, in a quiet kitchen, with a boy who couldn't reach the floor and a dish that came back full of cookies. I'd spent decades believing my worth was measured by how much of myself I could give away to people who didn't see me. Turns out the people who see you don't take much carrying at all. They just knock on your door and ask how you are and mean it. If you've ever sat by a phone that didn't ring, ever set a place at a table for someone who never came, ever bought a gift for somebody who'd already decided you didn't count, then you know this story already. You've been carrying it in your chest, and I want you to hear me, from one tired heart to another. You are not a backup plan. You are not the person who pays. You are not the lights that come on when somebody flips the switch and forgets to say thank you. You are the home, and it is never, ever too late to walk back inside and turn on the lights for yourself. I think about that velvet box more than I expected to. 40 years, all my love, engraved in letters I paid for $20 at a time, sitting on my kitchen table with nowhere to go. For the longest while, I believed the carrying was the love. I believed that if I just hauled enough up those stairs, Colleen would finally turn around and see me. But love that only moves in one direction isn't love at all. It's a bill that never stops coming due, and I'd been paying it so long I forgot I was allowed to stop. Here is what I understand now that I couldn't see then. Nothing in my story happened by accident. Every time I covered Dale's car repairs without being asked, every time I let a heart emoji stand in for a real thank you, I was teaching them that I would always be there, always reliable, always free. People treat you the way you train them to. I trained my own daughter to see me as a switch on the wall. That's a hard thing to admit, but admitting it was the first honest thing I'd done in years. The night I stopped crying and felt that strange, clear calm, that was the night I finally let myself see the truth instead of the comfortable story. Seeing clearly is its own kind of courage, because once you see, you can't unsee, and you have to do something about it. So I did. I drove to the bank in plain daylight and removed my name from the lie I'd been living. That took a backbone. I wasn't sure I still had at 74. It would have been so much easier to keep the peace, to keep paying, to keep being needed instead of being loved. What I learned from Eli, that little boy who couldn't reach the floor and brought my dish back full of cookies, is that the people who truly care for you never ask you to carry much. They just knock. They just sit at your table and mean it. The kindness I'd been throwing at people who set it aside half opened, he caught it and threw it right back. And that's when I knew where my love actually belonged. If there's anything I'd hand to you across the screen, it's this. Be good to people, but be good to yourself first, because you cannot keep filling cups that have a hole in the bottom. Look honestly at the people in your life and ask who turns toward you only when the lights go out and they need the switch. And when you finally see it, find the strength to do the hard, quiet thing anyway. You will ache. I still ache, but you will walk lighter. You don't need to be invited to your own life. You are always the home. It's never too late to go back inside and turn on the lights for yourself.